Hi, my name's Ross Bagdasarian Jr. As we celebrate Alvin and the Chipmunks' 65th anniversary, I always wonder, what are the odds that singing chipmunks would be around 65 years later? And the answer really lies in the character of my dad, who was a gambler. He always loved taking the long shot. And we have to go back to the time my dad was married early. I was about a year old. My sister, Carol, was about 2 years old. And my dad figured that the reasonable, responsible thing to do as a married man with 2 children was to have 60 acres of grapes in Fresno, California, and beat out a living. Well, that year, the grapes were not selling at all, so my dad decided to make raisins. He then had no market for the raisins, and I remember as a 1-year-old eating a lot of raisin pudding, raisin casserole. Finally, my mom said, "Ross, you love writing songs. Let's move to LA. The music business can't be any more difficult than raising grapes and raisins. So if we're gonna starve, let's starve doing the thing you love, which is writing songs." Well, about a year later, my dad had written his very first song, which was "Come On to My House." Rosemary Clooney made it a huge hit. And that first gambling spirit is what continued with my dad. Well, my dad figured, the songwriting business is a snap. This is so much easier than raising grapes. Many lean years later, however, 1958, my dad has $200 left in the bank and does what any really reasonable, thoughtful person would do. Goes out, takes $190 of it, and buys the state-of-the-art tape recorder, which allows him to change speeds with the music. My dad had slowed the speeds down and sped them back up on a piano that he had used in a song before, and he wondered what that might do to a voice. Well, a couple of weeks later, we all learned. That became a huge hit, and a few months later, Liberty Records, which really needed that hit song and had initially told my dad, "That's not gonna work, we need hits." And my dad said, "What have you got to lose? If it doesn't do well, you're gonna go bankrupt, and if it comes out and does well, you're saved." So Liberty Records, finally put the song out. And of course, it was a huge hit. A couple of months later, Liberty Records needs another big hit. And so they come back to my dad and say, "Ross, you know that witch doctor thing? We could use another one of those if you could come up with that." And my dad had already been thinking about how he could give that voice more personality, more character. So now we're looking about the middle of July 1958. It's hot outside, but my dad is trying to think of a song, like a Christmas song. And my brother, who's about 4 years old at the time, couldn't wait for Christmas. He knew that good things happened, there were presents galore, and he was very interested in Christmas coming as quickly as possible. And at one point he had asked my dad in July, if it was Christmas yet. And my dad loved the idea of this character that couldn't wait for Christmas. And so now, as I mentioned, he lived in Fresno, California, where he had grown up. We're now in Los Angeles. But when he was driving around Yosemite, which is near Fresno, California,
there were a lot of chipmunks around, and they'd all run away, except for one
that basically dared my dad in this 4,000-pound car that he was driving to pass by. And it was just jabbering at him.
Chit, 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 chit. As if to say, look, these other guys, you may scare them, buddy, but not me.
And my dad fell out of the car laughing. He said, "Okay, it's gonna be a tiny chipmunk that doesn't know the odds against it."
So years later, I remember this, and I wrote a Christmas song, and I remember the Chipmunks. And I certainly remember the Chit-Chit-Chit character, and he, of course, became Alvin.
Now, a lot of people ask, where do the names Alvin, Simon, and Theodore come from? And the fact is, whether he was getting back at the record executives or whether it was paying homage to them, I'm not sure which it was. But in any event, Alvin was named after Al Bennett, the president of Liberty Records. Simon was named after Cy Waronker, the vice president. And Theodore was named after the engineer Ted Keep. Ted and my dad actually won several Grammys for the engineering of the various Chipmunk songs. In any event, that's where those names came from. And again, whether payback or whether it was something as an homage or a tribute remains a mystery. So Alvin, Simon, and Theodore, the names of the Chipmunks, were now going to sing their first song, the Chipmunk Song. Now, remember when my dad brought us all into the den to hear what he had done, because he recorded a lot of these songs initially in his den at home. And my brother, sister, and I were kind of the guinea pigs to see whether or not we liked the song and whether we thought it would be good. The fact that Alvin was talking back to my dad was a thrill, because we really didn't do that. So we loved Alvin immediately, and as soon as the record was released, millions and millions and millions of other people enjoyed it as well. So that was the beginning of the Chipmunk Success. While they might have been somewhat born from the sound of Witch Doctor, they made their own mark in December 1958. My dad was on the Ed Sullivan Show with them.
Now all of the youngsters of the country have been singing or listening to Chipmunk. Here is David Seville in the first TV performance of it. David?
All right, you Chipmunks. Ready to sing your song?
I'll say we are. Yeah, let's sing it now.
Okay, Simon?
Okay.
Okay, Theodore?
Okay.
Okay, Alvin? Alvin? Alvin!
The Chipmunk Song sold 4.5 million records in 7 weeks. It was sold in cigar shops. It was sold next to ladies' lingerie. It sold so many records in such a short time. It was the fastest selling song of all time. And that remained true until the Beatles. The idea that 65 years later, Alvin would not only continue to aggravate David Seville, but that 3 singing chipmunks would be going stronger than ever is something that my 9-year-old self never could have imagined.
Very good, boys.
Let's sing it again. Yeah, let's sing
No,
it
that's
again.
enough. Let's not overdo it.
What do you mean overdo it? We want to sing
Now,
it
wait a
again.
minute, boys.
Yes, ready. Why can't we sing it?
Alvin, cut that. Now, wait. Theodore, just a minute. Simon, will you cut that out?